Hello, I'm Kathleen, and I'm a teacher and an artist, and today I want to share with you a really fun and easy, total beginner watercolor painting tutorial. There's no sketching required, and anybody can do this. So I start with some clean water on my background, and I wet my paper all over. And then I picked up some yellow, and I painted sort of an upside down triangle shape that's a little bit flat on the top. This is going to be my path because I'm doing a forest with some trees. And then I added some red just to kind of start the process of creating some depth. My background is still wet, so I'm picking up some very light brown. I have quite a bit of water in my brush, so the brown isn't going on very heavy. And as you can see, when your background paper is wet, this is called a wet on wet technique. When you put paint on top of it, it bleeds out a little bit, and the side on the left had started to dry a little. So I just picked up some more water and pulled some of that paint just to loosen it up a bit. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start adding some leaves. And I'm starting with some red, but again, I have quite a bit of water in my brush. You want to start light with watercolor because watercolor is very difficult to paint over top of dark colors. It's a transparent paint, so you really have to start light and gradually get darker. I prefer to do this where I create a very loose and open type of background using a wet on wet technique, and then I'm going to come in later and I'm going to add some details. So I'm just picking up some yellow, and as you can see, I have the impression of sort of a forest path with the trees, but it's very abstract and very loose. So now I'm just coming in and just adding some more reddish orange and letting that just flow and bleed out. And I'm taking my paper towel because I want to create a little bit more of a lighter space in between some of my color. So I took my paper towel, I twisted it really small, and then I'm just tapping it on the paper. The first time I did it, it took up too much paint, so then I just made it much tighter and smaller. So now I'm using some green. I want to add a little bit of green to my painting, and I'm working in what's called a very intuitive manner, where I have a general idea of what I want my painting to look like, but I'm just really playing with the material and kind of seeing what I can come up with. Now, my brown that I put down was a little too dark, so I cleaned my brush and I picked that color back up and moved it to some different areas. And I want to add some more darker red to the floor of my forest. So I'm just tapping my brush around. I'm just being very loose with my brush marks. I'm just letting that paint move around and expand. I added some brighter colors to the forest floor. I came back and picked up some darker brown, and I'm really creating a very loose, squiggly type of tree trunk. And as you notice, as I go back further in the distance, the tree trunks get lighter and they also get skinnier and shorter. And this is what's called atmospheric perspective. So we have two different perspectives going on in this painting. We have one point perspective where you have the two lines of the forest floor that are going back in the distance and they meet at one point, creating sort of that triangle look. And then atmospheric perspective is where when you have things off in the distance, they look lighter and they look smaller and more hazy. So that's what I'm trying to create here. So my trees towards the front are going to be darker, and that's why I'm doing that, because I'm trying to create this atmospheric perspective. I'm picking up a little bit of black and I'm mixing it in with my brown, and you know, I really play around with my color, and I don't create a lot of color at once. I like to just mix as I go and just see what kind of variations I can come up with as I'm creating my painting. I do add a little bit of shadow underneath the base of my trees. And if you hear some jingling going on in the background, that's my puppy, so I hope that doesn't bother you, but he does like to make his presence known sometimes, and he's always with me. So, and if you've been here to my channel before, I'm sure you probably have heard it in the past. So I want to be very loose with my leaves on my tree. So what I'm doing here is I'm actually covering outside of my paper with paper towels because I have a tendency to get a little messy with what I'm going to do next, and I'm going to do a spattering technique. So I'm picking up a lot of paint with my brush, and I have quite a bit of water in it, and I'm using a larger brush because my background is still wet, a lot of these colors are going to bleed out and not make really distinct dots on my paper, which is what I want, because again, I'm trying to do a very intuitive process. And intuitive painting is really a very mindful activity. It's very relaxing. It's very good for your mental health. What I like to do is put on some classical music. I love classical music. And I just like to play and move paint around and try not to think too much. I mean, we have so many things we have to do during the day, that we have this schedule and we have to get this done and this has to be this way. And you know, with intuitive painting, it's just playing, and really it's your time and just seeing all the different things that you can create. It's very good for you. So I want to define my leaves a little more. So at this point now, and my paper has dried, I'm picking up some darker red and I'm just dabbing my brush around. And I'm just moving it in different directions. I'm kind of going down towards the base. I'm leaving space in between because you want to have lighter spaces showing behind. And then I'm doing some leaves on the path of my forest. And I'm just continuing to move my brush, and I'm still playing. Once I've added my leaves and added a little more spatter, I decided to come back and work on my trees. I'm using a little bit of a darker brown now. I have less water, more paint, so it's not quite as transparent. And I am mixing a little bit of green in my brown. I'm mixing some black in my brown, and I'm bringing my tree trunk base down and I'm pulling it over into the center of my path because I'm just trying to reinforce this idea of there being some shadows underneath my tree trunks. And I'm using sort of a medium round brush, and I'm using the tip, and if you notice my brush marks are very squiggly. I want to sort of repeat this very loose, expressive, squiggly idea, so I'm not being really particular with having very straight tree trunks, and I'm picking up some darker black and I'm adding some darker value to the outside edge of my trees. Just tapping the brush as I go and being very quick and expressive. I am adding a little more detail to the trees as I go back, but notice they are still going to be a little bit thinner, and I'm not worrying about going over where I was originally with my lines, because that gives even more of an impression of there being more trees off in the distance. And just moving towards the front, doing the same on the other side, adding those shadows underneath and adding a little bit of a darker edge to the outside of my tree trunks. I did add some thinner lines towards the top of my trees to start the idea of some branches going up into the leaves, and I also added a little bit of brown in between my trees, just trying to give the impression of more trees in the distance. And now I'm just going to continue to add some more finer details. I picked up a little bit of green. I wanted to add some green to my composition, and a lot of my paint is still wet underneath, so you'll notice that the color is bleeding out a bit and moving around, not quite as much because the paper is drying a bit. I decided I wanted to add even darker red to my leaves, so I picked up more paint and did some spattering. I didn't want to overdo it, so I did kind of come back in and tap on the red and just move it around a bit, make it a little less precise. And once I added that paint, I went over it again, and the colors just continued to sort of blend together and just create a really nice loose impression of some fall leaves. So if you've gotten this far, then I thank you for watching my video, and I hope that you will like and subscribe to my channel. I do have a series upcoming for the holidays. It's going to be a lot of different loose, expressive, easy Christmas cards that you can make, and I'll be starting that in the next week or so. So be sure you subscribe so that you can get notifications of when those painting tutorials are going to be available. And I'm hoping to also add some additional tutorials, more in acrylic painting and mixed media, and also some in some of my fiber art designs after the holidays are over. So I hope that you'll stay with me and you enjoy all of the free tutorials that I offer on my channel. So now my painting is just about done, and I'm just still really building my layers. I really want to have the darkest red and oranges at the top, so that's why I'm going back and just continuing to add some final details to my painting. So now my painting is done, and you can stop here. You do not have to do this next portion that I'm going to show you how to do, but I like to use mixed media. I like to add different elements to my paintings, and I really love to use ink. So what I'm doing is I'm taking a very fine tip ink pen, and I'm just drawing in a very sketchy, loose, expressive manner to the outside of my tree trunks. I'm adding some branches. I'm pressing very lightly. This is a very fine tip ink pen, but I am pressing very lightly because I don't want to have too heavy of an impression of the lines for my trees. And I'm even drawing outside of where I have paint so that you can actually really see the ink lines. And I'm just going to do this and add some tree branches randomly. I'm going to add some outside lines to the edges of my path just to define that a little bit more, because I still want an expressive and loose impressionist type of painting, but I did want to add some additional details, and you could even do this with a paintbrush. So I hope that you enjoyed this painting tutorial. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe.